Welcome to the Grove Podcast, where we feature Evergreen members and their real-life stories of salvation, transformation, struggle, and hope. I'm Kaylee Carter, and today we have Phil and Susan McCoy with us. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you guys have been at Evergreen, and where you guys serve.
We have been at Evergreen since November of 2020. So we're coming up on 6 years, and we serve in a class that we call the Living Stones. I think we're not supposed to have names like that, but we're sort of rebels a little bit. But we're the Living Stones, and we take that from a passage in Peter. Our group is generally folks, senior adults, however you describe that term. But we really got a variety of ages, and we've led that class probably since the spring, maybe midsummer of 2021. You know, the church was coming in after COVID, and attendance was down a bit, so we had an opportunity to kind of lead a class, and we've been doing that since and have a really wonderful group of people.
That's amazing. Well, I love that you guys have a name, so I think every Sunday school class should have one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what is ours? Is it an adult whatever?
I don't know.
We don't pay attention to that, so I'm sorry, but everybody knows who we are. We're known for being kind of the rowdy group.
You know what? You got to have fun.
Yes. Yes.
Life can be a little serious, so got to mix it up with some fun.
Yes, and we're super happy to be here, and a strange series of events brought us to Evergreen. It's all been super.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. So, Phil, share with us a little bit about your childhood and how you were raised.
Well, my childhood wasn't Andy Taylor type childhood, and so I'm not Opie, but I had really a wonderful Christian home led in terms of Christianity by a really godly Christian mother. But my parents were what I would just define as unequally yoked, in that he did not go to church. He wasn't a believer, but my mother was a very strong Christian woman. And they had an unusual agreement that would allow me to go to Sunday school with mom, and then my dad would pick me up after Sunday school. So that was the compromise that we made. But the church that my mom went to, I think as I grew up, I really wasn't interested in church. And we have such incredible children and youth ministries today here at a place like Evergreen. I just don't remember things like that existing when I was a kid. So there wasn't a big attraction to come. And I just really had not any interest for the most part. I was more excited about going home with dad and having the day off. And that really continued. I don't remember what age it was when they just stopped, but I did get to the point when I was 14. I was able to somehow talk my dad into buying a motorcycle for me. And suddenly I had an ability to explore on my own. And I had a talk with my mom and really just asked if I could go to another church, if she would be okay if I went to another church. And she said, yeah, I mean, as long as you're in church somewhere that I know you'll hear the message, she was okay with that. And my thing there really wasn't so much that I wanted to go to church. I wanted to go to church where my girlfriend was. And so, you know, I think part of my background, and this is one of the things that you'll hear about Susan, is I was motivated to go to church wherever the girls were. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's just the truth. And I really wasn't drawn to church at that time until when I got old enough to get a job. My first real job was at a restaurant called Casa Bonita. A lot of people will remember Casa Bonita. It was an incredible place to work, and I learned how to work, and the training there was amazing. They taught about customer service, just so many things that I learned there. But the most important thing is that's where I met Susan. Susan started working there after I'd been there a while, and I saw her on a Saturday every once in a while. I don't know if it was once a month. We would have these large team meetings and gatherings of all the young people. It was a great place for young people to work because you're surrounded by other teenagers, and it was fun. And we would have these meetings. And so the first time I saw Susan at that meeting, it was like, she's the one. And I just knew it. And I told a friend of mine that I said, and I'm like 16, maybe going on 17, I'm going to marry her. And he just thought that was hilarious. He laughed at me because basically he was saying, she's so far out of your league, there's no way. But we worked it out. So we met, had a pretty cool pickup line. I told her that she walked funny, and that seemed to do the trick. So a little bit of flirting that took place there. We went out, and things just got stronger. I mean, it was obvious that we really enjoyed being together. We fell in love, and she made it clear from the start that something that was really important to her was she wanted a husband. I mean, if we were going to get married, she wanted a husband that would go to church with her. And I'm like, that's fine. So what, if that's the qualification, I'm all in for that. And we graduated in 1976 from Nathan Hale. And a year later, we're married.
Yeah. High school sweethearts.
High school sweetheart. Wow. So yeah, our first date was in June of 1975.
Do you remember your first date?
Our first official date, I took her. I'm a big spender. Okay. I mean, I know how to entertain. So I took her to a steakhouse here in Tulsa. At the time, it was a really nice steakhouse. It was called Montana Mining Company. And we were going to go to a movie after. And so we're having dinner. Yeah, we're having dinner, and she's cutting into her steak. She cuts the steak, and she flips it, and it goes across the room, a bite of her steak to another table.
Yes. Oh, no.
So she was pretty embarrassed. And then we went to a movie, and I think the movie was at the Jill Kinmont story. Was that what it was called?
A tearjerker.
So it's a tearjerker, and she bawls pretty much all the way through the movie. But despite that, yeah, it was obvious that she's the one. Yeah.
So, well, Susan, will you share with us a little bit about your childhood and how you were raised?
I was born in Munich, Germany, and I was placed in a Catholic orphanage because my birth mother was unmarried. And so I was adopted by an American serviceman, and he was married to a German woman, and they weren't able to have children. And so they would go visit this adoption agency. And I happened to be the youngest one, and she wanted a baby. So they decided to adopt me. And my mother told me the story that when they came to pick me up, the nuns were praying over me as they dressed me, and they prayed that God would have his hand on my life. And I really feel like he really, truly has had his hand on me. My mother told me about Jesus. I was once in a Christmas play at church on bass. But I don't really recall us discussing Jesus or going to church very much. My dad retired from the Army. We moved to Tulsa to be close to my mother's only surviving relative because all of her family had died in the war in Germany. So she just had a sister that was still alive, my aunt. So we moved here, and
how old were you whenever you moved here?
I was 11 years old.
When you moved here, did you guys get connected to a church or?
We did. We started going to the church where my aunt and uncle were, which was a downtown Baptist church. But I didn't get to go very often because my mother didn't drive, and my dad got a different job, and he worked on Sunday mornings, so we couldn't go to church anymore. And so I would go to visit all the churches around town where my friends were. So I went to a lot of different churches in Tulsa, and that's what I remember. I think that's why I really wanted to have a husband that would go to church with me.
Yeah. And did you, profess faith at all, or was it more kind of a social activity with your friends?
When I was 11, my mother said, "You will be baptized when we go to this church." And so I was baptized. I knew about Jesus because my mother had talked to me about him, but I don't think it was really, truly he was in my heart. I just knew him, and I knew I wanted to be to learn about him, and I knew I wanted to go to church and be around other people. It wasn't until I think we were either dating or maybe just newly married, and I heard a sermon, and it made me realize that, yes, I need to rededicate my life. So I went down front, and that's when I think it really came into my heart. He came into my heart, and I realized that's who I need to live for. That's the moment.
And so you guys came to Tulsa, you were here, you went to church with your friends, and then you started working at the same place, correct?
Yes.
As Casa Bonita?
Yes.
What was y'all's favorite room, by the way?
Probably the Acapulco room where the waterfall was.
Yes.
That was probably our favorite. We also went to high school together. I think he sort of alluded to it. But so we saw each other at high school. In fact, funny story, I was walking down the hall, and this girl, he popped out. I really didn't even remember who he was. And he said, "I quit Casa Bonita." And I said, "Oh, okay." My friend said, "Who was that?" And I said, "I don't know, some guy that used to work at Casa Bonita."
She loves to tell that story. I would say everyone's favorite room was probably the Acapulco room, but I really love the caves.
I did too. I thought it was really neat.
It was just such a great place. I have really good memories.
If you are listening and you don't know what Casa Bonita is, it was this restaurant that had all sorts of different rooms where you could eat. So there was a cave room, a waterfall room,
Governor's Mansion, the courtyard,
The
the vineyard. That was where we'd have our general meetings.
Yes.
and there was always a magician that would come and do a little show for the kids, and there's
Singers.
arcade.
Yeah, it was really ahead of its time.
It was.
The same people that did Casa Bonita did Crystals and Taco Bueno. So I think most people here in Tulsa will at least recognize Taco Bueno. Yeah.
So Susan, I'm curious what your first thoughts were of Phil.
Well, I thought he was cute. He was really tall, and I like that because I'm kind of tall. And he seemed to be in charge and know what he was doing. And so I just liked it that he showed some interest in me. But he'd been there a long time, and so I don't know.
Well, I had lots of different jobs. So since I'd been there a lot, I would kind of pop up in all these different places. And so she would see me doing this thing, and then she would see me doing something else.
Yeah.
And so that may be part of
He
what
was
she
doing
said.
Into the Line, which is where you mark the ticket to see what everyone has gotten. And then I saw him frying sopapillas. That was a surprise. So.
That was very impressive. when she saw me frying sopapillas,
You're like, that's it, right?
that closed the deal.
Closed the deal.
Only the higher echelon could fry sopapillas.
Yeah.
Right.
You had to wear those really big leather gloves.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of take us on the journey of you guys now are dating and what happens from there.
We started dating in 75 and then proposed probably, I can't remember exactly when I proposed, maybe 76. We dated for a year. We were engaged for a year, graduated Nathan Hale in 1976, and then we got married in August of 1977. So I had just finished a business school there, and I just wanted to be sure that I had a steady job to get started on. So that was kind of the criteria. Went to work in the energy industry as an accountant, and then we got married. And right off the bat, we started attending regularly at the church that we got married. We got married at First Baptist Tulsa downtown. That's where Susan's mom and sister and uncle went. And we joined what they called was a young, newly married class. But when we got there, most of the couples in there were, 5 or 10 years older. Because you got to remember, we got married when I was 19 and Susan was 18. So we were very young. But somehow, and I just think this is God at work, we kept coming. Even though we felt like the younger kind of couple that didn't fit in necessarily. But eventually, over time, some other couples came in and we struck up friendships. But the benefit for me, and I think for Susan too, is that we were really fortunate, maybe not so much with the couples early on, but the Bible teachers there. We had a couple of teachers that they knew their Bible, And so for me, I'm hearing teaching that I just didn't hear growing up. And so I was learning a lot. I mean, I like to learn. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily interested in the spiritual side of things. I'm coming as a commitment that I made to Susan about attending church. But the benefit was I was hearing the truth. And over time, the class got a bit younger, and
we got older.
But it developed into a very, very strong young adult class. You know, young couples, didn't have kids yet. And so we really felt a part of that. We became pretty active. We didn't have any money. So for our entertainment, we played softball, volleyball, whatever the church was doing. Because back then, the Baptist Association, they had all these leagues to do things like that. And they were a ton of fun for young couples to go out and, you know, have an activity, grab something to eat, and just, you know, hang out.
And you all are still active today.
Yes.
You're pickleball stars.
We love pickleball.
Yes. So, yes, anyone who wants to play pickleball, come talk to Phil and Susan.
That's right.
We're ready to go.
We'll teach you.
Yes.
We will
We need an Evergreen pickleball squad, you know? Talk a bit about your marriage, and Phil, you were pursuing school at this time, is that correct?
Yes. As I said, after I got out of this business school that I went to, it wasn't a degreed university. And so I knew that if I was going to make any advancements in a career in order to try to make more money, you know, just kind of do better, that it was obvious that I needed to become a CPA, which meant that I was going to have to go back to school. And so we decided that I would do that and started taking pretty much full-time classes at night. So working at night, busy taking classes. What would you say that you were doing while I was?
Well, we had classes together.
We did. So we had classes together until a significant event happened in 1984. You want to talk about that?
Oh, that I was pregnant?
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Well, the professor seemed to be really intrigued that we were in classes together, but he got me through accounting. But because I'm not a numbers person. But yeah, I've all of a sudden I was just so tired and they would turn off the lights to show a film, and I'd fall asleep at the desk, which is not like me. And I discovered that I was pregnant. And this was not planned because we really hadn't ever thought about, we just decided we would be happy not having children, just kind of living our lives. And so I found out I was pregnant, and I told Phil, and it was quite a shock. And so, but we're so happy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that God's at work and knows what's best for us when we don't. It just so happened, though, that kind of comes at a time when there was a lot of stress in my life. So the stress of going to school and keeping up with that. And
we were both working full-time downtown.
Yeah, both
We'd ride to work together and ride home. And
working full-time. And then also, this is in the mid-1980s here in Tulsa, and the energy industry was in shambles. And tons of layoff, companies relocating, companies going out of business. And one of the companies that I was working for was like that. And it was obvious that there wasn't going to be a future there. And in fact, the company filed Chapter 11. You know, they're going bankruptcy, and I'm the last accounting person there kind of running the shop. And that was stressful because, number one, it's like this job is going to go away. I've got a baby coming to support, and I've got to finish school. And so I was pretty stressed out. And I don't think I knew it at the time, and I don't think I understood the toll that was taking on me physically. But miraculously, God provided another job. And it's so cool to look back, because this job became very important for the next couple of years because of what was coming. So our son Chase was born in May of 1985 and started this new job, which that is stressful, and still trying to finish up school. But at that time, I started getting very, very tired. And my energy level, it just kind of was non-existent. And Susan and I, like she said, we worked together downtown, and we would have lunch together, and we'd take walks together. But it got to the point, even at lunch, those walks were exhausting. And it became obvious that this just something isn't right. And by December, I guess she talked me into going to the doctor, say, you need to find out what's going on. Go to the doctor, December the 19th, 1985. It was the last final also at school. This was it. This was going to be the end of school, one last final that night. I go to the doctor that day, and he tells me that he took some blood and said, I'm going to send you to an oncologist today. And I was pretty surprised about that. But I told him, well, it just so happens that I know some oncologists because my mother has leukemia. And let's go see if I can go see them because they know about my mom. I go over there, and they run tests on me, and that oncologist tells me that he's going to put me in the hospital that day. And I said, well, can't do that today. I've got a test tonight that I've got to finish, and my car's here. I've got to get my wife. And he said, no. He said, you're going in the hospital today. So that kind of knocked things apart and put me in the hospital and run tests, and they determined that I've got what's called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it's a pretty rare type of cancer that typically would come to an adult male probably in his 60s, and I'm 27. So that was pretty shocking. And they immediately put me on chemotherapy, and that became the norm for the next year and a half. Go in on Thursdays, get chemo, work on Friday, be sick Saturday and Sunday, and back to work on Monday.
And what was that like, going through chemo, being young, and trying to start a career?
Very angry. That was my reaction. Because you got to remember, I don't have a good spiritual base at that time, and I don't understand what God is doing and all of that. So I was angry, and we didn't tell anyone other than my family and our two closest friends, because I took that as kind of a affront on my manhood. It's like, what's wrong with me? You know, I thought I was in the best physical condition of my life, and that wasn't true. So I was angry, and so I really withdrew, and we stopped going to church because I didn't want to go to church. But fortunately, we had friends at church that started to reach out to us.
The power of community and the body of Christ. And when you're plugged in, and the ability for those connections to see, hey, we see you're not showing up, and we care about you, and we love you, and want to be here for you. Right. And so what was that like for them to reach out to you?
Well, I think the first thing was that it broke the barrier of letting other people know what's going on. Because nobody knew what was going on. It was fortunate in that, I didn't lose my hair, so there were no physical signs of what was taking place. And I just managed it, like I said, month to month. So for them to check in on us, it's kind of, what's going on? Are you guys not showing up? And also, we had this new baby that's 7 months old, 8 months old about that time. But they didn't do it in a way that was offensive. And that's really, that has become a big part of our story, is our community. I think that kind of helped begin me not being so angry. There's different stages whenever you get news like that, you go through. So I think that was kind of setting me up for the next stage of, okay, what's this going to look like going forward? And then that's where because I did the chemo for a year and a half. We did that for a year and a half. And then in talking to my oncologist about the future, what's my future look like? Is it always going to be like this? He started telling me about alternative treatments. And a bone marrow transplant was what he was really keyed on. I'm the type of person that I want to solve the problem. And I think generally most guys are. You agree?
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to solve the problem, and that becomes a way to solve my problem. And so we proceeded to check that out and to see, well, what's involved with that. One of the first things was to see if I've got a relative that's a viable bone marrow donor. And I have two sisters. Connie is here at this church now with us. And she and my other sister, they had those tests done. And it turned out we got the results back that Roberta, my other sister, she was 0 for 5, which is not good. We think she's adopted. And then Connie, at that point, they told us that she was 3 out of 5. We wanted 5 out of 5. And that was our hope and our prayer. But we got to the point, both of us, that we decided, in talking to the doctor, that 3 out of 5 may be the right match.
The reason why you want 5 out of 5 is to eliminate any chance of rejection and all of those things that happen. So that's why we were hoping and praying for 5 out of 5.
Yeah, because it's a risky
things to match.
It's a risky treatment, and the better your match is, the better your odds of survival of the treatment are. So 3 out of 5. We said, okay. So we started next steps, and then it wasn't long, maybe a week. I don't know if it's that long. We got a call from the Red Cross that had did the blood work, and they told us that they had made a mistake and that it was really 5 out of 5.
Wow.
So we were
a perfect match.
We were very stoked at that point and thought, God is helping us here. We traveled to MD Anderson in Houston, and the Fred Hutchinson Clinic is in Seattle, Washington. And it turns out Seattle, Washington, the Hutchinson Clinic, they're the ones that really pioneered that treatment. And we like them better. The only problem was it's far away, and this is going to be expensive. And we come back. We made the decision, though, that it's expensive, but we need to do this. This is our hope. And it just so happens, why don't you maybe...
About the insurance?
Well, our community. So you go back to our friends at church. They knew what we were doing. They knew that we went to Seattle. And so when we got back, good friend there, he wanted to know, he said, what's this going to cost? How much money are you going to need? Well, we had great insurance because of this company that I got that job with right after Chase was born. Their insurance would pay 100% of this, basically. And at that time, this was an experimental treatment to a lot of insurance companies, so a lot of them wouldn't have paid. And we're talking, these are hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical. This is in 1987. But he knew that we needed living expenses because we've got our home here to keep up, and we're going to be in Seattle for at least 4 to 6 months. And he's like, how much do you need? And we said, we're going to cover this. We got credit cards, it doesn't matter. We're going to be able to take care of it. And he refused. So I told him that the people at the Hutchinson Center said, you need at least $10,000 minimum in 1987 to live up there.
You have to rent an apartment there, and then Connie was coming up, and she wasn't going to be working, and so we had living expenses for her, and so...
Yeah, it was a lot to cover. And he just said, okay. And, I didn't think too much about it. But he and our church community, our friends at First Baptist, they kind of went on this campaign, and I think I told you this. To me, this is the original GoFundMe, and they raised money for us. And while we were up there for 4 months, they raised $20,000 to cover all of our living expenses. So when it comes to all the financial side of this, everything was taken care of.
Man, the Lord was totally providing for you all.
Absolutely.
And
we got every day in the mail, we got letters and cards from our friends at church.
Little presents for our son.
Because he was 2 now.
Yeah.
Wow. The Lord, like you said earlier, with the job that you got, clearly set this in motion way before it all happened. And even being connected to the church you guys were at and those relationships. And so it always amazes me when you do get to reflect back on the things that God has done, and to see that if this didn't happen, then this couldn't happen. It's A to B and everything, and to see that everything happens perfect timing. And so I love that. So you guys are in Seattle and you've got everything taken care of for you, and what happens next?
The good news is we didn't, and I'm the worrier guy, I'm the finance guy, so I didn't have to really think about the finances, and that was great. The bone marrow procedure is pretty brutal, to say the least. They give you extreme chemo and the total body radiation. The thing is, they kill your bone marrow. So without a bone marrow transplant, you're just going to die, because you don't have the ability to create new blood cells
Or fight infections.
And so then what has to happen is the donor, Connie, my sister, they take bone marrow from her. It looks like a blood transfusion.
Like a bag of blood.
A pint of blood. They give that to me, and then we have to wait to see, because the incredible thing about God's creation of the body, or one of them, is bone marrow knows what to do. And those cells, they know where to go, and they know how to recreate blood. And the danger is that in this case, the new bone marrow cells can reject my body. And so they give you some drugs to help with that. And then you just wait and see over time how those cells will start to replicate and rebuild your bone marrow and your blood cells. And that was a slow process. I was in an isolated room for 47 days, sick every day. I had no food for 47 days because I was sick every day. And so all my food was just through IVs. It was pretty traumatic. But gradually, we started seeing some improvement. The crazy, sad thing during that was we got a call one night that my mother had passed away. She had leukemia, and so that just got the best of her, and she passed away. She was only 57 at the time. The sad thing was we couldn't leave, we couldn't go to her funeral. But Connie did. Connie came back, and we had, again, a good friend from our church fly to Seattle to take her place, to help Susan take care of Chase. Our friends at church were just incredible to us.
Yeah.
We got, suddenly, the accounts started coming in. I got well enough that finally I was able to be released from the hospital, and then we would just hang around Seattle while I continued to make progress. We were there 4 months in total. We come back in November of 1987. Yeah, 1987. And when we get off the plane, all of our church friends meet us at the airport. This is before all of the restrictions about going to the gate. You could actually go to the gate and greet people coming off the plane. They greeted us at the airport. Tell them about the house, what they did at home.
Well, and we had a girl stay in our house for us. We really didn't know her. My dentist found her for us. And so she stayed in it, and I think she left it in pretty much of a pit. And so all of our friends came, cleaned the house totally, packed the refrigerator with food, and they were all there waiting for us as we got off the plane, and they had been incredible.
It was an incredible homecoming. Of course, we were happy to be home. We were happy to be around all of our friends, and all that just made a huge impression on me. Yeah. That was a great Christmas that year. We were celebrating being back home, but unfortunately, from that time that we got home in November to January and February, I really wasn't recovering. And I had to keep returning to the hospital to get blood transfusions because my marrow wasn't producing enough for me to really just to survive. And that really led me into a pretty deep pit of depression because I had just come through all of this and was excited, after having borne all just that experience, the disappointment of this not seeming like it's working, that was pretty sad. And I became a pretty sad Phil. And, my doctor, he even began suggesting that, we may have to start chemo treatments again. And he was other alternatives about how we're going to deal with this. Because we just weren't sure, did it not work? Did it not kill the cancer? Is the cancer back? There was a lot of uncertainty there.
Yeah. And Susan, share with me a little bit about kind of this walking through all of this with Phil, and like, how was that whenever you were, like, you both were raising Chase and...
It was really hard because watching someone you love going through that it's really takes a toll. And I would cry and think, how is it that I have this son and now he may not have a father to help raise him? And I just couldn't imagine that. And so it was really, really hard. And watching him suffer with everything he was going through. And they had told us all the statistics about just even going through the process of where they kill your marrow, that 40% of the people die just of that. And so, but I'm the kind of person that I have to experience things myself. And they had all these support groups that you could go to, and I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to experience it and rely on God that He would help me. And so, I just dealt with it as every day as it came. And I really knew in my heart that it was going to work. When we came back to town and there was the thought that maybe it hadn't, it was pretty heart-wrenching. But I kept thinking, surely God has something in store. Surely He can fix this. I can't, but surely He can. So, but it's hard watching someone you love go through that. It's really difficult.
And were you guys still plugged in back at the church and community that you had at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were part of a really great, by then, young married couple group. And we had a lot of really close friends. And so, yeah, we were plugged in.
And I don't know if Susan had said something to our friends there kind of about my emotional state, or they just could tell. Good friends there, they knew that I needed to get up and get out of the house. And they worked to help me do that. And
he was off work for 2.5 years after he recovered from the bone marrow transplant. So I was back at work and he was there.
But it was, for me, this is kind of that point where, you hear about people kind of coming to the end of themselves. I've tried everything that I could do. I did chemo. I did the bone marrow transplant. There's nothing else that Phil could solve this problem. And really, for me, that was kind of the dark place where I give up. And that's when I turned to God and just really released and trusted Him. And that's, I can't point to a day, but I can tell you through a period, that's where I came to know Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And we, in thinking about, where do we go from here, we decided that we're going to trust God. I mean, He's brought us through this. And I don't want to start treatments again, and we're going to enjoy our time. And I couldn't go back to work, but we just made the decision that we were just going to trust. Mm-hmm. And my friends were good to me. Two of them, one of them got me to come to help him in his office. You know, there was nothing significant for me to do, but he just wanted me to get out of the house, you know, kind of get off the couch.
Well, and they created another Mother's Day out day for you
Yes.
at church.
Yeah, I'm glad that Susan said this, because the Mother's Day Out program, you know, it's all moms. And I was the only guy. They were like, Phil, bring Chase in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I was taking care of Chase, and go play golf. And I had friends, I didn't know how to play golf. My friends from church taught me how to play golf. They wanted me out of the house. And then a good friend at the University of Tulsa, he came up with a great idea that I could be a academic advisor to the incoming freshmen on the football team. And so he got me to come down there and help run a study hall for the football players, just because they were concerned about me. And imagine that through that, I think through God just working, is like, I think God was satisfied. It's like, okay, you hit bottom, you're trusting me, let me show you what I could do. Yeah. And we can't explain it other than God.
Yeah.
Does it mean that the transplant just took longer? I don't know. Was it just an incredible miracle? That's what I think. That's what I choose to believe. Whatever, God did something. And
We're so thankful.
I'm not the man that I was. So 2.5 years, I go back to work. That was interesting, because back then, companies, when they would ask about, well, what'd you do during that 2.5 years? You go back to school? What'd you do, Phil? Well, and I would be honest with them and tell them, well, I had cancer. I was recovering from a bone marrow transplant. Well, they weren't really interested in hiring somebody that had a cancer history. But God worked another miracle, and he found me a job. He found me a company that needed someone as bad as I needed a job. And that turned into working at Bank of Oklahoma for 32 years.
Wow.
You know, I just retired a year ago. But I mean, there's so many things that we could call out that God did over just our marriage is amazing. And, you know, we love to look back and see and remember. It's like, God did that.
The blessing of other people and how the Lord uses those people to really bring you to the point of where you are, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
He puts them in a specific time and place.
Yes. Perfect timing. So, praise God.
Yes.
For that miracle. Praise God for true life change, you know, in your heart, and getting to a point of being able to walk in obedience, of trust in him, and getting to walk on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
And so what a testimony for that. And so I want to kind of get into, you guys were wanting another child. Walk us through kind of that story.
Well, because he'd been through all the cancer and radiation and treatments, we couldn't have any more children. And so we were content with just having one. That was fine. We knew that's what God had given us. And we loved him so much. We still do. But I kept thinking there was something else I needed to do. And so I went to a football meeting where our son was, the coach was talking to all the parents. And he said, there's a young man that wants to play football, but his parents have no way to get him here, and they don't have a phone. So who would be willing to go pick him up? And I raised my hand. I thought, this is it. So I raised my hand, and I looked around. I was the only one with my hand up. So that's how Billy came into our life. And Phil wasn't too happy with me when he found out because it was not in a kind of sketchy part of town. But I said, God will take care of me and it's going to be all right. But from then on, this was fifth grade. So we started picking him up, taking him to practice, and then he would eat with us afterward. And then on the weekends, he would come over, or I would go get him, and he would, they were in the same classes together, some of them, they were same grade. And so he just sort of became a part of our household, and I'd pray and pray that he would accept Jesus. I didn't really know, but he had already accepted Jesus, and he would get himself up at his house, and the bus ministry through Eastwood would come pick him up and take him to church. This was when he was in third or fourth grade. And he was just used to kind of taking care of himself. His mother worked really long hours, and she was not home, and his dad was just kind of messing
Not
around.
involved.
Not involved. But he was there, but not really. And so, but we took him to Falls Creek.
Church.
Took him to church, started taking him to church. It just became he just became part of our family. And he didn't live with us because he had a mom and dad, but we would take him home, and I could never tell his mom where he was because they had no phone. And she just said, as long as I know he's with you, it's all fine. And so he finally did come live with us. It's the senior year of high school. But, we taught him to drive. We got his birth certificate. He's just another son. And he and Chase call each other brothers. And so
they were made each other's wedding.
Yeah, they were. And Billy joined the Army, I think, because of Chase's example, because Chase was in the Army. And he's such a blessing to us. So God gave us another child when we couldn't have another one. So we have two sons.
And just, another way that the Lord provides, and, the Lord always provides in ways that we don't expect it to, so much better than we could imagine. And so I love that you get to have that added blessing for sure.
I probably hear from him more than I met all his girlfriends when he was in college. I didn't meet any of Chase's. So.
We have so many funny stories about him and his dating experiences. Chase, our son, he went to West Point, so he left home at 18. He's basically been gone.
In fact, they tell you he's the property of the Army. He's not your son anymore.
Yeah.
So
His military career and everything else. And he's been in Afghanistan. He's been all over the world. So we just really don't have the kind of contact with him. Billy has been closer. Billy's stationed in Texas right now. So we at least have an opportunity. Chase has got 2 children, 8 and 6. Billy's got 5. The oldest is 11. So we've got 7 grandchildren, whereas, like we said, we never expected to have children. And now then we've got 7 grandchildren, and pretty amazing. And you're right. You couldn't have scripted how this worked out, for sure.
Well, and I was adopted in Germany, and had I not been adopted, I would have been in an orphanage, grown up in an orphanage. So it says in the Bible that God takes the fatherless. So I was an unloved, unwanted child, and God took me from that situation and brought me all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I met Phil. And we have children. And so what a blessing. God is so good.
Yes. The abundance of blessings overflowing, So share with us how you guys got to Evergreen.
Well, it was 2020, and I had been feeling for a while that we needed to leave that church. It was just a feeling, another one, like the one I had whenever Billy came into our life. But I was waiting on my husband because he's a spiritual leader.
We had been there for 44
Wow.
years.
Yes.
And I'd been having this feeling, but I'd been waiting. And it was really hard because we had all those friends, those really good friends who had done so much for us. But Connie, Phil's sister that was the bone marrow donor, her husband died in Texas, and she decided to come back to Tulsa. And so I said, we'll go church shopping with you. And
Find her a house.
I had to find her. We found her a house, and then it's not far from us. And so we went church shopping. And I thought, this is going to play right into my plans. And so we visited several churches and thought, no, that's not it. Because I knew she wanted something close to where she lives.
She wanted a community church close.
And so this friend of mine, in fact, my best friend from our old church, said she'd heard good things about Evergreen. And so we came here, and from the minute, I'm not kidding, the minute we got out of our car, it was like out of the car in the parking lot, we could tell. I mean, something was different. Something was going on. You could just feel it. And then we walked in, and there were all those people welcoming us, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. And so we went into the service, and as Michael was preaching, and I think he was talking about the election, and I mean, it was so profound. I just wrote on my bulletin, now this is a preacher. And so we just never left. We went to 101, but we didn't sign right away because we had to, it was hard to think about leaving.
It was hard for me.
Yeah. It was really hard to leave all those friends.
Yeah, being connected for so many years and over all the course of everything you experienced.
Yeah, we shared life together.
But then I remember hearing Michael say that you didn't leave your church, you were deployed here. And so that is just so true. It's just so true. Because how he started teaching was we had taken forever to try to find a class, because back then it was still COVID time. Classes were kind of sparse, and we had a hard time finding that. And the one that we found finally was a very small class, and it was headed by an ex-pastor who we were in there for a while, and we thought, we found it. And he took a view to a call, and he's now the pastor of a church in Jinx. And so then Nick calls us, and he said, I noticed that you've taught Sunday school in the past. Would you be interested? And so there you go. Yeah. I mean, we were deployed.
Yeah. And what is it like to going from a church when you guys got first married, 18, 19 years old, you know, there's so many people pouring into you, and now you guys get to do that as well, and you're shepherding this class. Like, what is that like for you all?
Well, I love people, and I think it's because of my experience in the past of knowing what a community, a class community, what that means. I told you that I had two really good teachers right after we were married that I got to sit under, and even though I wasn't necessarily that interested then, I absorbed and I learned. And so after my health experience, and when we came back and got involved, I was much more eager. And, one of those gentlemen, he gave me an opportunity to teach a class. And I really enjoyed it. And I just sensed that this was what God wanted me to do. And so then we started small. We did some 5th grade work, and we did some 8th grade classes. Then we did
I even taught kindergarten,
high schoolers, and we graduated to college and career. And then we did young married couples, and all of those were an opportunity to just try to build a community for those groups. Particularly in the college and career was hard, but for me it's always been about building those connections with it. You're just not coming to hear a lesson. You're coming because you want to be part of the body, and there's more to just coming and hearing a lesson. You're going to hear God's word from me, but you're also going to hear how we're going to encourage each other.
And then while he was teaching those classes, we lost our director, and so this man at church in administration asked if I would be a director, and I said, I don't know how to do that. And so he came alongside and mentored me in what it took to become a director. So now Phil teaches our class, and I'm the director and joke teller of the class. So, I keep it light and fluffy.
Yeah.
Well.
And, we tell people, and we make it a point that everyone in our group, they understands that we welcome everybody. And when people come through that door, they need to be welcomed, and they need to experience that there's joy in this room. And, I think that that's a gift that God has given us, because we love those people and we want joy for them. And we want to be able to be there for them as a group as we're experiencing life, particularly because, life happens and things aren't always great. And we're experiencing a lot of challenges with, people in our group right now. Both, family issues with adult children that don't know God, and we all want them to know God. So we're supporting each other in that. And at the same time, they're hearing truth, and it's very rewarding.
I love working with adults more our age, because when we worked with all the young marrieds, I really didn't know very many people our age, other than our close group of friends we had from so long ago. So I really enjoy taking care of and knowing the people in our Sunday school group.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a big task. We've got a sizable group of people, and Susan does a great job of keeping up with what's going on with everyone, and we've got a good network in there of knowing what's going on with each other.
Yeah.
Great people who want to help.
Yeah, what a privilege to be able to walk alongside people when they are experiencing something that is really, really hard. And obviously you guys have that personal experience yourself and know what that looks like. And so you can extend that help to them. So as we kind of wrap up here, I want to ask you guys just a couple final questions. So with a big piece of your story being the community and the people around you, if there is a listener here today that maybe they are struggling to get connected to community, whether it's here at Evergreen or maybe it's their personal church, or maybe they just don't really see the point of connecting with others, what would you say to them, or what would be your encouragement?
When we first came, Connie and I, we didn't know anyone, and we went to the Move class, which I know that people work during the day, but that's a class that happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays where you just exercise together. And so we started learning to know some people there. And then we there was a women's gathering where they served soup, and so we helped serve soup. That's where I met Judy Tyser, and she is just so wonderful. And we started meeting people like that. And then Connie got really involved with a lot of the women's ministry, and we got involved with the sports. We started teaching pickleball for beginners at Hakey Creek, and just did whatever. I wanted to get to know people. And so I felt like I did whatever it took to get to know people. And so there are lists and lists when you go through one-on-one. There are just lists of so many things you can be involved in, whatever you enjoy, whether it's grounds crew or the Threads ministry, which is knitting. I'm not into that, but a lot of people are. And then with the legacy group that meets and they come together and play games. So it's just being willing to try things. And if you don't like it, so what? You move on to the next thing and find somewhere else. But you're getting to know people as you do that. Yeah. Attending the banquets, the Christmas banquet, and just getting out there and meeting people, plugging in that way.
Yeah, I mean, we both just agree that someone that's looking for a new church, especially from people that are coming in and they don't know anyone, you have to take the initiative. And so I encourage people, take the initiative. Don't just, you're going to hear truth from Michael every Sunday. So you're going to get great truth from his message, but you've got to plug in somewhere in a Sunday school group. Look at the website, look at the programs, find out what is available, and go check it out. Take the initiative and check it out. And don't be content to just sit on the sideline. You come to church because you want to be part of that community. And being part of that community means you need to be engaged. Yeah. And that means that you're going to have to take the initiative. And I know that that's hard for a lot of people, because we still see people that come in and we want to be welcoming, and we want to make sure that people are spoken to. If they're in our class, we want people to know that they are noticed and that we see them. And so for you've got to make that happen. You got to be there and be seen, and you need to take that step and introduce yourself and say, I'm drawn to Evergreen. How can I get connected? Mm-hmm. Where is a good place for me? Because people want you to be. They want you to be engaged, and they want you to be part of the community. Mm-hmm. It's not like people are saying, no, you're not welcome here. I mean, as Susan said, when we were in the parking lot, we knew that we were welcome here. And that's for all of the members of Evergreen. Remember, we want those people to feel welcome, and we want them to experience joy when they're here.
And there is a place.
Yes.
There is a place. You have to try different things until you find what it is that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. We were not meant to do life alone.
Yes.
And so there is a place for everyone.
Yeah. If nothing else, I mean, that's the message from me, the importance of community.
So maybe there is a listener who is walking through a challenging situation. Maybe it's health related, maybe it's family, whatever the case. And maybe they're starting to pull away from community, from the church. What encouragement would you want to give to this person?
Don't give up. Hopefully that they've had some connections so that someone will realize that they're not here, that they've fallen through the cracks somehow, and that someone will reach out to them. I think if you're going through something that's really challenging or seems hopeless, I mean, that's the key. I know what it's like to live in a moment where you feel like there's no hope. And something needs to happen so that you understand there is hope. And that can be true for even someone who's a solid believer. In my case, I wasn't really a believer, and I had no hope. And that's a really sad place. But even there are times as believers, we kind of feel like, gosh, I've lost my hope. And whether it's health or grief over a loved one, you need to remember that there is grace coming to get you through this. And little by little, God will get you through it. And it's going to be better. There is something better, because I strongly believe that whatever it is that we're going through, God is using that for a better outcome. And that's really hard to go through. And it's hard to see friends go through that. But we must believe and trust that there is something better coming. And community can help people remember that. So being this on your own Christian, that's not a good place, especially if you're experiencing something like that. You need encouragement of friends to sensitively remind you that God is in this and He's going to bring you through it.
Well, and everyone is dealt with or is dealing with something. And even though they may look like everything is perfect on the outside, they most likely can identify with what you're going through. So don't be afraid. Don't let the devil say they won't know. They don't want to hear about you. Or you have to put your pride away and ask for help. And go to someone that you trust. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
I'm glad you said that, because that's really important. Because if you go back in my history, whenever my friends were wanting to help initially and like offering to help financially, that was not Phil's method. I didn't need help. In my view, I can do this on my own. I'm going to do this on my own. We're going to be okay without your help. I grew up, I guess, in an environment, it's kind of like, I don't need to reach out for help. We can do it. I had to learn, no, getting help is good. Getting help and seeing friends help you is a wonderful
experience. It's humbling for one thing, because then that helps you understand, I couldn't do that on my own. I needed that help. And then when you see the joy that they get from helping, that's another.
It blesses them.
And so I've learned that lesson. It's kind of like, it is okay to seek help, and it is wonderful to be the helper.
Well, that is beautiful. Thank you so much, Phil and Susan, for being here and sharing your story. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you would like more information about our church, please visit our website at evergreenbc.org.